But this is an important topic, and we're thrilled that Brian Querry can be here to uh, inform you of all the options that are out there for vets. Brian is the Director of Veteran Affairs for Centre County, and he will all up to date as to what is being offered.
Okay.
As usual, I have to thank our core sponsors, which are Encompass Health, the Office of Aging, Juniper, and Grain Hospice. So we appreciate everything that they do for us. And with that, I would like to turn this over to Brian.
Okay, so I would really like to try to keep this very low key. If you have a question, there's not a big group here. Ask your questions. If you want to clarify something or you have additional questions, we can just go forward with it. I do have some things I've looked to talk off of, but again, I'm willing to go wherever we have to go to answer your questions on that one. So I think one of the key things here is most of you, I'm guessing, are here because, or calling in because you have a parent, that may be a veteran, and you're just seeing how can that be helpful, and what benefits are out there for that, for them as a veteran, and even the surviving spouse of a veteran, could potentially qualify for some benefits as well. We'll talk a little bit about that as I go through this. One of the things, though, you have to basically look at is, the paperwork and what you need to have, and all those things. So one of the things that comes up a lot of times, unfortunately, the benefits, again, I'm not the person that drives this. These are all based on laws and programs that are set up. But some of these programs do require that the veteran be a wartime era veteran. Doesn't necessarily mean that the veteran was in wartime, but just served during a wartime period. And one of my pamphlets over there does have the listing of it. I'm not going to sit here and go through all those dates, on that. But the thing that comes up, and that determines whether that veteran would be eligible for what they call a non-service connected pension, okay, or the surviving spouse would be eligible for what they call a survivor or death pension. Again, that's all predicated on, did the veteran have wartime service? Essentially, they're looking for at least 60 days of active duty with 1 day during that wartime. And it doesn't necessarily have to be consecutive. I have had a vet that served like 2 years, before the Vietnam War. He was called up, I think, for 20 days or something like that, being mobilized to go over, but then they demobilized him, but he still served, so he made that requirement. Now, anytime that I'm talking about a pension, okay, that's based on financial need. Okay, so there are things that you have to show the financial need. The key things to think about is they look at your income, your assets, and then based on your medical needs, they determine if how much you could potentially be eligible for. So for this pension, it can be varies based on what you become eligible for, again, based on your income and medical needs. But the highest level for a veteran, a single, is about a little over $2,000 per month. If he's married, if she's married, it could be about $2,300 or $2,400 per month. That's the max on that. It could be less than that. Now, the surviving spouse, usually a surviving spouse is single, so it's right around almost $1,500 per month they'd be eligible for. So, if any of you, and I'm sure you probably have looked at, that's not going to be necessarily enough, to pay for their full going into assisted living, or if they're having to pay for full-time health care, or in-home care and things like that. But a lot of times it may be enough just to get them, between their income and their assets, or that can stretch out their assets for much longer and make them be able to, have a better quality of life for a longer period of time. So, in addition, I'm not going to probably spend a whole lot of time with this because I think most of you are here. There's another program that the VA provides where a veteran can get income, and that's called a compensation program. And again, now at this point, it doesn't matter whether they're wartime or peacetime. They just have to be active duty. And there's potentially, what you'll find out anytime that you're talking with the VA, there's kind of the general rules, but there are all these different exceptions to the rules and different ways you can get into it. So I would always caution you never to make the assumption that you or your spouse or your parents aren't eligible for anything without really checking with somebody and making sure, even though maybe there's not, they weren't in wartime, maybe there's something else that we can do for him or her. You know what I'm saying? There always may be something, and a lot of times what comes into here to play too, if the veteran was like a Vietnam era veteran and was over in Vietnam, on the ground in Vietnam, and then recently they've actually expanded that. They could be in Thailand, they could have been in Guam. These are all locations where they use Agent Orange. And what happens is, even if a veteran doesn't apply for something while they're alive, if you can show that he or she died from a condition that was caused or could have been caused by like an Agent Orange exposure, you know what I'm saying? They don't have to be enrolled, in this. Then the surviving spouse could be eligible for a lot of money, potentially for a lot of money. And this kind of, it's called what the DIC, or Dependency Indemnity Compensation. It's a compensation payment. Again, this is not based on income at all. It's just based on you are able to show that their deceased spouse, okay, their death was somehow connected to their service. Okay. We either do that presumptively based on Agent Orange, exposure, and there's a list of a lot of different diseases and things that could be caused by Agent Orange. Diabetes, there's heart disease, coronary artery disease, Parkinsonism, hypothyroidism, lung cancer, bladder cancer. That's just some of them. It's not all of them. So I would also suggest if you're in a position where you have a surviving spouse or veteran, and if their husband or wife or spouse was in Vietnam, they died, you probably ought to look at that because there could be something there, no matter what their income is, that could be a benefit for them. Now, recently, you may have heard about the PACT Act, and we are starting to get the people that in Iraq and the Middle East and Afghanistan that served in Egypt, and all those different places through the Middle East since 1990 and the Gulf War. They've basically opened up, they've decided, and rightly so, that they did a lot of things like with burn pits and burning and disposing of garbage and medical waste and chemicals and just burning them in open burn pits. And that, obviously, if there's somebody out there inhaling that or around that, exposed to that kind of waste and smoke and things like that, they can, there's a whole presumptive conditions, and I think it's over 20-some different conditions, lots of different respiratory issues, different types of cancers, all these different things, and now these people are now in their 60s and 70s. Saying may not be anyone here, but if you're aware of somebody that that served over there, either still alive and have some major conditions, most of the time related to respiratory issues, or different types of cancers. Again, you probably need to have them, or you or whoever the case may be, family member contact somebody that's what they call a Veteran Services Officer. Um, I do not recommend anybody doing their own claims unless you're a qualified Veteran Services Officer. There's just so many different types of things that you may not understand or realize there may be, other things you can do to get better at. So always, reach out. And I know online there may be people not from Centre County. I work for Centre County. I do people outside that work with families or veterans outside of Centre County. But in Pennsylvania, and pretty much as far as I know, every state, pretty much their county office will have a Veterans Affairs Officer, somebody that's basically employed, to do these kind of services, or Veteran Services Officers. They take the training. We have to get a certain amount of training every year. We qualify to be able to do all these different types of claims and everything. So, and I always tell the people, I say, hey, if you're working with me, I'm your forms guy. I wouldn't want to do these forms if I didn't have to, but luckily I have a program that does a lot of it for me. So it was very helpful. Like I was telling somebody earlier, basically, I'll do your forms. I'll give you a list of stuff to get, documents. I'll give you, some documents that need to be filled out by different people. If you don't know it, you'll find out anytime you work with the VA, they have a form for everything. So basically, there's going to be multiple forms, different types of things like that. So when you talk about what kind of documentation do you need, you really need to have what they call their discharge papers. We talked a little bit earlier with somebody here. After about the early 1950s, all the services went to kind of one type of form. It's called a DD-214. And that form shows when the veteran went into the service, when he got out of the service, what types of things, that training that he got, or she got, where they were stationed, what type of awards and stuff like that. And more importantly, besides the length of service, also the character of their discharge. So basically, for all these programs, again, there may be some options with this, but you have to have an honorable discharge to be eligible for this program. Now, there may be ways you can get them upgraded and do different things. So even if you have, somebody that does not have an honorable discharge, probably have somebody look at that and see if there's something that can be done. I also would recommend that, and this is something I've gone through in my own experience with my parents when they passed, as far as the financial documents. It's very good. I know for some people and parents, they want to hold their financial information close hold, but it becomes very, very difficult if they get to a point where they just mentally can't remember things, or they lose things and stuff like that, and they're trying to recreate and figure out, where their income is, where their assets are, and all these things. Unfortunately, we all pass, and when you start getting into set up an estate and trying to figure out, it's always better to kind of know about that beforehand and understand that, and be able to pull those documents together, because these are the type of documents you're going to have to show to the VA. They're not going to fortunately take your word for it, if you have assets. Now, the asset limit for these programs for this pension I'm talking about is about $150,000. So that's household assets. What I'm saying. So that includes what both spouses have. So but you have to have the documentation showing where that's at and how much it is. And you always want to make sure if there's generating any income or 1099s or anything like that, you want to make sure that you have those to give to the VA, because the VA does essentially income matching with the IRS. They get those forms, what I'm saying. So what happens is you put in a claim and you have all these forms and you're saying this is the income. They go ahead and the IRS sends them over, okay, this is what we have for them. And all of a sudden they come up with a discrepancy, and they send you a little love note saying, hey, you told us this was the income. However, what's going on with this 1099-R from forever. What's going on with this interest payment? Interesting note, one time I had somebody come in, I started working on their claim and everything, and lo and behold, I was looking through their 1040 for their parents, and I said, where's this $700 of interest payments coming at this bank? They had over $700 coming in a month. That was a pretty sizable amount of money. They go, I don't know anything about it. I said, well, better probably go talk to the bank and talk to your father, guys. And lo and behold, there was about $500,000 or $600,000 that was in an account that the child didn't know about. Bad news was they didn't qualify for any of my programs. The good news was they found a lot of money that could be beneficial for them. You know what I'm saying? So again, it comes down to if you can get a good understanding and know where the money is and know how much and how it's invested and everything. It'll be extremely helpful as everybody transitions and they need more money and all these different programs. Because essentially, here's the bottom line: it's not the VA somebody program. If you're going to try to apply for something, they're going to want to know what the income and assets are. So if you don't provide it to me, you're going for some other program, they're going to want to know it. So you're going to need to find that out anyway. Again, the VA does some other programs. I've talked a little bit about compensation. I talked a bit about the pensions. You know what I'm saying? So the VA does provide health care. Now, VA health care is pretty much primarily only for the veteran. Unfortunately, the surviving spouse won't qualify for the VA health care, but the veteran could qualify for it. And especially if somebody's in a home or paying a lot of money out of pocket, they do look at your income and make a determination of that. So in general, here in the State College area, it's somewhere around the $40,000 or $50,000 household income. Maybe a little bit higher, depending on your medical expenses, on that. So it's somewhere in that area that they could be qualified for health care. So why would you want, your mother, father, whoever they have good health care, well, they can still get into VA health care, and being in VA health care doesn't negate them keeping their current health care provider, but the VA in general provides more stuff at no cost or very low cost, you know what I'm saying? They need a ramp for their house, you know what I'm saying? They need hearing aids, if you need a hospital bed, you know what I'm saying? If you need a stair lift, all these things are maybe potentially provided by the VA, but basically the doorway to get in to get these things is you've got to be in VA healthcare. They're all provided through VA healthcare. So again, it's you have to apply for things. It goes back to there's a form for that. They would apply for that. The VA also, yes.
So somebody could have Medicare, supplemental Medicare plan, and also apply for VA as well.
Correct.
You have three.
Yeah, potentially you could.
Okay.
Now, I will say, and you kind of brought that up, it may not be free, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
They may have to pay a copay for it, you know what I'm saying? But like the hearing aids, they use discretionary funds, and hearing aids are provided for free. $5,000, $6,000 for a decent pair of hearing aids, good deal, you know what I'm saying? Right. They even provide glasses. They also will provide in-home care, you know what I'm saying, if you qualify for that. And here in Centre County and some of the other counties, they actually have VA as home-based teams where, consisting of doctors and nurses, therapists, and those things that will actually go out to the home and provide these services for those vets that are homebound, that they can't get out. They also will provide in-home care. Now, it's not on the order of, hours and hours per week. Generally, I've seen it's usually somewhere in that 8 to 10 hour per week. I have seen as high as 18. I think I've only ever seen that once. And one of the things, it's very unfortunate though, the VA doesn't have their own healthcare providers. They basically just, farm that out to Home Instead or other, civilian providers. At least in Centre County, in this area here, there's not enough providers out there, or aides actually working many times to provide that care. The VA may identify and be willing to pay for those 8 or 10 hours, but they can't find somebody to fulfill those hours. One of their contracted providers just don't have the people. So, and that's not necessarily VA, but I think we're seeing that kind of across the board for anybody trying to get into healthcare. See some head shaking here. Yes.
Another question.
Sure.
I qualified for VA healthcare years ago, and then when I turned 65, I went on to Medicare. So I still believe I qualify. But when I get to the point where I start, you were talking about the income level necessary to qualify. When I start having to take an RMD, my income goes up from retirement savings. Is that then unqualified?
Potentially, you could. Unfortunately, even though I disagree with it, I fought with them. I don't win this battle. For me, an RMD, if we're talking about recommended minimum distribution, I don't see the difference in that in taking money out of your savings account. So the VA won't count your savings; they don't count that as an asset.
Yeah.
But as soon as you take a distribution, from one of your IRAs or whatever you have, that all of a sudden counts as income. I disagree with that. I tried to fight with that. I lost that battle.
That makes sense.
You know what I'm saying? I don't think it should. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because years ago they used to count assets for healthcare, and then I can't remember. It must have been 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
They dropped the asset level and just want income only. You know what I'm saying? So I don't, not to beat a dead horse. I just don't see a difference. If you had it in your savings account and you took it out of your savings account, it wouldn't count against you. But as soon as you get that IRS document, showing that you got money from that, then they count that as income.
Yeah, I've been sort of through all those changes. They've been confusing. Like,
Yeah.
you have to record every year. Like, oh, you don't have to report because we're getting the info. Oh, now your savings don't count.
Yeah, it's very
Okay.
confusing. Any other question? I probably should have opened up with this. Please feel free. It's a small group here. We can bring up your questions. One of the other things I didn't talk about, I probably should have a little bit, but if you do have a Marine Corps veteran or a family member, if they were in Camp Lejeune from that 53 to 87 time frame, you probably all seen the commercials. If you've been in Camp Lejeune, if you have Parkinson's, if you have this and that, you can have money. Well, you can get money from that, you know what I'm saying? So I would suggest you might want to pursue that. That's outside of the VA system, you know what I'm saying? But it could be some significant amount of money potentially that a veteran qualifies for that. And that's based on the, you don't know, the water was contaminated with different solvents and things during those years. And the veterans that were there, and even family members that were there in the Camp Lejeune area, that drank that water, there's been multiple issues that potentially could have developed from that. The VA always has recognized that, and then part of the PACT Act was the Camp Lejeune Justice Act, where they put a lot of money into a program. Essentially, it's like a tort type of claim that you make against the government that you can get money. And it's interesting that you can still get your VA benefit. Your VA benefit, won't count against your tort claim or getting it, but your tort claim, the amount of money you get, could be affected by what you're getting from the VA. You know what I'm saying? So, but again, I guess that's why they pay lawyers. That's all done by lawyers, so that's not something that I can, VSO can help you with. sometimes, there are state homes in Pennsylvania. There's 6 of them. The closest one here in Centre County is down in Hollingsburg, and if you've driven by there recently, they've actually started construction. They're going to have a whole new second building there. So you can, apply. You got to be a veteran and qualify for that. And you can get enrolled and actually become a resident there. The key thing there is, please remember, again, there's always qualifications and everything, but VA home, a state VA home is not going to be free. You know what I'm saying? They are going to look at your income, your assets, and make a determination of what they'll charge you. In general, it's going to be much cheaper to go to a VA home than a non-VA, either nonprofit or for-profit location. The other thing in general too is, again, I know a lot of these profits and nonprofit homes are really good places. They provide a great service, but they don't have the income streams that these state VA homes have. These VA homes get money from the VA, federal VA. They get money from the state. You know what I'm saying? And they also get payments in there, so they have a little bit more money to work with. And in general, if you ever walk around, I am one of the advisory boards for the Hollingsburg home. You see a lot more workers, aides, nurses, and things like that. I think in general they have they do some numbers or something like that. It's about one more additional person or whatever, 100 or whatever. So you can see the difference in that. So there's just, again, they have more money to pay for, provide those things. And then there is an application process, the PAD, apply online. Something I can help you with on that. What happens is the process may not be as quick as perhaps, if you go to one of the local center cares or someplace like that. They do go through a process. They have to verify that they have a bed available, two, that they're able to actually, meet your needs and things like that. There may be some cases where they might not be able to meet the needs of the resident.
Is that part of the qualifications that for wartime veterans?
To go to state VA home?
Yeah.
No, you don't have to be at all. And interesting, they count them a little bit differently. And one of the things, a National Guard member that never had any active duty can still qualify for getting into a state VA home. The service can too. You know what I'm saying? So that could be a potential option. Now, there are a certain number of beds and things we have to look at differently. A lot of this is driven by money streams and how the VA pays for it. So they have to restrict the number of beds, for what they call, the National Guard. They use the thing non-veterans. I hate that non-veterans thing because I always get the National Guard and reservists come to me and say, I'm not a veteran. I said, no, you are a veteran, but you unfortunately just don't qualify for some of the different programs. But you're a veteran in my mind. Also, a surviving spouse of a veteran can get into a state VA too. But there are the number of beds, are restricted. There may be a wait list, but that's still an option. There are, like in Pennsylvania, there are some few other benefits, like there's some death benefits that the county will pay both for the veteran. We're talking $100 to $200. And this is in Pennsylvania, and it varies a little bit by county too. Some pay 75, some pay 100. But that's something, and at least in Centre County, most of the funeral homes know that process and how to. I gotta get a drink of water here. But they know how to process those claims and they, work with it. But again, not a lot of money on that. veteran can be buried at the National Cemetery for free of charge. So again, they have to qualify. It's a process of verifying the eligibility. Essentially, there's no internment costs. There's no plot costs. Essentially, you have to get the remains or cremains to the front gate. They take care of everything once they're there. So I don't know the total number of national cemeteries, but the closest one here is down in Indiantown Gap, near Harrisburg here for us. So
Can spouses and children also?
spouses can, if it's a child, has to be a dependent child.
Okay.
And essentially, they could even be buried prior to that, what I'm saying, on that. So essentially, if it's not a columbarium for cremains, if you're, still in caskets, the caskets are stacked, what I'm saying, on that. So you have one plot, caskets will be stacked, one above the other. The other interesting, just a note, Arlington Cemetery is actually not under the National Cemetery Association. They're actually underneath the Army. So the Army controls people that can get in there. And primarily, as far as I know, for bodies and caskets are just about filled for that. Like really have to be like a really wartime vet, killed in action. A lot of requirements there. I think they still have availability for cremains to be interred there, but that's all worked through the Army. A lot of times, most, at least around here, the funeral homes know how the process of getting, essentially a slot, getting in there. Usually it's, if you're going to Arlington, it's about, I think, a 6 or 8 month wait. They're doing like, I think, somewhere like 4 or 5 interments an hour. They just have every 10, 20 minutes there's an interment going on. They do it right. You can see the caskets being pulled. Of course, lots of things. They do it very well. I think just to kind of wrap this up a little bit, if your father or mother doesn't need help right now, but you think that they might qualify for some of these things, obviously you want to get all their documents together. We talked a little bit, or at least I talked a little bit about, you got to get their financial documents together. You know what I'm saying? You got to find their discharge papers. And then also, this became a little difficult for us. I think I kind of knew it, but nice to know their desires. Where do they, what do they want done when that time comes? Cremation. Do they want to go to a national cemetery if that's an option? Maybe have a family plot. All those types of things. It's always good to know beforehand. Didn't quite have that discussion with my father, but we did with my mother before she passed. I think I've talked long enough. I don't know if we have questions. Yes, sir.
Do you have any feel or idea about current status of when you request military war records? Is there still this millions of backlogs?
No, it's actually much quicker. I haven't done one recently, but I think about a year ago it started. The backlog was done, and we were seeing them come through in a month or so. Again, if you request what they're asking about here for the people online, perhaps, is they're asking about the Archives in St. Louis about requesting records there. During COVID, the archives essentially shut down for periods of time, not enough people there, and so meanwhile, everybody's putting in their requests and things like that. So they had hundreds of thousands of backlogs and things. I think the VA even sent people down there to help them pull these things. So it took them a while, but as far as I know, they're pretty much through that. I will let you know that they are doing one of the things I think kind of came out of that. If you request it online, the request and you give them an email address, they can email you those records. Now they do use a password, and generally your password is going to be that requisition number they give you when you do that. So you got to make sure you keep that number, because you could get all of a sudden an email saying, "Hey, attach your records," and you go try to open it, and it wants it needs a password. If you don't have that password, you kind of have to track it down and talk with the archives, but they are much quicker than what they were. Anything else?
I have just a quick question. You had mentioned that there are, there seems to be maybe money for a caregiver program, but it's a matter that there's no staffing for that. Is that correct?
Actually, that brings up another question I should have talked about. Correct. I mean, the issue is the VA can authorize and pay for in-home care. That's what you're talking about.
Right.
The issue you run into is, again, they have contracts with different providers. I don't know who they all are, Homestead or whatever, multiple providers. The problem you're running into is, yes, they got it authorized, but they can't find a provider, or somebody to go out there. And then one of the other issues that I understand that plays into this too, a lot of these people, that the aides and stuff like going, they want to cluster, their people together. They don't want to have somebody, up in snowshoe, you know what I'm saying, and another person, they're across, down near Huntington or someplace like that, because they're spending all their time running around. So sometimes they're saying, you're too far out, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to spend 2 hours getting to you when I could be making money during those hours. So that all kind of plays in this. Unfortunately, the providers or the aides kind of have the power here because we need them, you know what I'm saying? So
We need more.
yeah. There is a program, probably should have talked a little bit about it. If you have a veteran, if your mother or father, if they're getting a rating of 70% or greater, you know what I'm saying, there is what they call a caregiver support program that the VA runs, where they can actually qualify for a stipend and the payments for that. But the key thing here is that veteran has to be service connected. And when we talk about service connection, so what we're saying here is you have a current condition, diagnosed condition that you can somehow link to your service. A lot of times, you've got a bum knee. Well, you initially hurt that knee when you're in the service. It's documented, you know what I'm saying? So the VA then will service connect that. So you can end up then getting multiple issues service connected. Okay. Now remember, they give you a percentage rating. The thing to remember about percentage ratings are that they are percentage, they're not just like numbers. So you can't be more than 100% service connect. Percent rating, because it doesn't 100% is not everything. So they add these up. So you have to remember they're adding them up as percentages. And then you also have to remember the VA then throws some corrective factors in there depending on, if both your legs, are messed up, they'll actually add a little another percentage in there to give you a little higher rating. If you're one side of your body, both your, a leg and an arm is out of commission, they'll do that as well. So, but the key thing here for this caregiver support, it's called the expanded caregiver support program, is if that veteran's rated 70%, I'm saying the thought is the caregiver is supposed to be living at home with them, in their home with them, taking care of them. We're talking usually, a spouse or maybe a child or somebody like that. They could qualify for this. I can't remember what the amounts are right now, but it's I think they have two different levels, and I just can't remember what the amount is. Potentially, it's something that could help defray. You want to take care of your parent or somebody like that. You need a little bit of money. You can't make them stretch everything, so it might be enough to get you by. But the key thing again They gotta be service connected, 70% of it.
Okay.
The other thing I really got, I mean, what we talk here, I don't know how long we talk, but whatever. I only scratched the surface of all these different things and these different programs. I mean, I could, they asked me, I don't do PowerPoints anymore just because there's so much information. I feel like I'm drowning, you know what I'm saying, on this one. Sometimes I'm drowning myself when I say, oh, I forgot about that one or something. But anyway, it's just that I really like to try to just talk to you. And the other thing I'm leaving you, don't think that yourself or your parent, or whatever, may or may not qualify for it. Always check. And then the other thing too is the rules change too. You know what I'm saying? So what may have been true last year may not be true now. So you might want to always kind of, hey, has this changed? You know what I'm saying? Have they changed the amounts? You know what I'm saying? Have they changed? You know, the amounts do change. They go up every year for the cost of living. So they do increase the payments, and they increase the thresholds. You know.
So they could delete programs too, or no?
I have not seen a program get deleted since I've been doing this for 12 years.
Okay.
We've always been adding more programs. I just can't envision that we would do that to the veterans. Yes.
Your point about checking, is it reasonable? Would it be reasonable to say, email you and say, okay, this is the current situation. I want to check some things. Where do I?
Well, the thing of it is, I would say, reasonable thing, say, can I call you to talk about my situation? Okay, because the thing of it, number one, I'm not good enough at emails to kind of cover, I spend all my time saying, oh, I should have sent that or that. So generally, I like to just talk to you, you know, and let's ask, because there's always, if this is true, then we may need to ask about that, you know what I'm saying? If that's true, then I need to go back and look at, so there's all these different qualifiers and different things like that, that you really gotta, you can talk on the phone, but you need to kind of have a discourse.
Right.
Go back and forth. So I think you're better?
No,
Oh, okay.
it's my dad.
Any other questions? If you're done,
I'm done.
you're done. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming out. Do you have a question? I'll stick around for
No, I think you answered ours well enough before the program that we'll follow the information age and see what we would qualify